Counselor Barron? We're doing the roll call. Can you hear me?
I can now, yes, and I am
And you're
present.
present.
Yes, thank
Thank
you.
you. And Counselor Marshall?
Here.
All right, we'll move on to the agenda. Are there any amendments to it?
No amendments.
Okay, hearing none, we'll go right to public comment on agenda items only. On agenda items only, we're inviting public comment.
Push the button.
They're talking about the bridge and Vancouver, Portland Bridge, and they want to make a new one, and they're talking about safety on it. Well, I'm talking about safety of the animals and the fish underneath, and the fact that when they make the bridge, they should build in a generator so that the bridge is producing energy. If you're going to build something, you might as well build a generator into it and let it, you know, create its own energy with the flow of, you know, the river. But I don't know. I mean, also I wanted to see something for like the fish and the wildlife, and that includes making into the structure little things that the birds can make little houses in, and welcoming the bees, because it can be done in a bridge. You can put flowers and stuff and make it look almost like a natural bridge. I know that they've made bridges that they make so that the animals can cross over to not endanger them. So it is a safety issue for people, because I even used to cross the bridge on my bike for fun. So there needs to be a public safe corridor, maybe like in the 205, which in the middle has a safe place for people to walk, you know, but we have to also consider the fish and the wildlife, because their lives matter too. And hopefully, I don't know, do I have minutes? Oh, yeah. So anyways, keeping the bridge safe, raising it up, and the fact that if they want to build another one, they don't have to, because there's already a railroad system on the west side of I-5, and if you just add on to that, instead of going and terrorizing a whole new neighborhood, just build on what's already there, because I see the bridge, I can see the trains right here, just expand on what you got, instead of building something from scratch. You see what I'm saying? You have a bridge for trains, so why would you make a whole nother, you know, railroad system? I'm just saying, build on what you got instead of making more mess. And, you know, keep in mind that you can build towers that are welcoming to birds and birds' nests and bees' nests into the structure, along with also making it 100% generated by natural energy, which would be the flow of the river. They even have some mechanisms that make energy off the tides, because of the movement of the tides, and some, you know, off the wind, and just cars blowing the wind, and you hook up a generator to that, and then you're not stuck with a big bill. You know, I'm just saying. Thank you.
Thank you. Next comment, please.
Kimberly Goheen Elbin, life citizen of Clark County, Washington. Your resolution sounds fine. However, it does state equity and inclusion tolls, transportation, of which I believe Mayor Ann McInerney Ogle is the chair of, if I'm not mistaken, for transportation. So she's got her hands in a lot of things pushing that Marx's agenda she's a member of. I was at all their meetings about this bridge, and they've already spent millions of dollars on maps. I mean, those maps go a long ways. I understand mapping, and very expensive, the hard-earned tax dollars being spent there. Your white paper thing put out here mentions that the Key Bridge, and I was going to bring this up, and I'm glad I read it here, was going to only cost them to rebuild the Francis Scott Key Bridge $400 million. And now you come up with, but by the 1st of April of 24, estimates escalated to the wide range of $2 to $5 billion. My question was going to be, before I read this, was, I believe you made it okay to spend the $1 to $2 billion that's going to be spent here on our bridge, and that people might have brought it up. Why would they be able to build a huge bridge, a lot longer than ours, for $400 million, but now we were here for $1 to $2 billion? You might want to have, and I'm speaking to the citizens, by the way, when I speak, you might ask the mayor, you might ask this council why they would have done that. Well, it's lining their pockets, of which I've been putting on record for quite a while. Unfortunately, people need to wake up, and that's what my duty is. I believe also on the agenda of the minutes I'll be speaking on that you're passing was your Clear Water rate study relating to clear water. And on that presentation outline, you list the number one rate study. I'm going to go real quickly through here. Where are we today? Number two is council input needed. What clean water services are important to you? And it goes on, and then according to the next page, in January, they had a rate study kickoff. In February, they had a core team meeting, department interviews. And in March, they did an identify service gaps and estimated funding needs. Well, how much of citizens' hard-earned tax dollars were spent internally for those 3 months, and did any work get done for the citizens? The agenda then moves to why now, and then they gave reasons. Well, expenses surpass revenue. Well, duh. My comment to the public is our hard-earned tax dollars are being spent internally. They're building more and more departments and everything under the government. And we want to make sure that our government does what it's supposed to do as an oath.
Okay,
and
thank
not
you.
to overspend
Your
and take
time
care of the people.
has been exceeded. Thank you. Do we have anyone else in the room? Yes, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Christine Perry, and as a resident in Clark County and the director of WSU Extension here, I am expressing my support for the potential of the creation of an agricultural commission. The establishment of such a commission as recommended by the Agricultural Preservation Advisory Committee, I feel like is crucial for ensuring that the voices of farmers are heard and considered in policy-making processes. In 2017, the USDA census ranked Clark County as having the third highest number of farms and the highest quality of soils in the state, which I think makes it particularly important to safeguard agricultural land. Looking at examples from other counties in Washington, when we're looking at King, Pierce, Skagit, it's evident that an agricultural commission plays a vital role in advising on comprehensive planning, land use issues, and legislation related to agriculture and land preservation. These commissions provide valuable feedback and support to promote the long-term success and diversity of agricultural production. Having a Clark County Agriculture Commission could serve in various functions, including developing a strategic plan for the economic sustainability for local ag, evaluating the status of agriculture, and recommending programs to support farmers, such as agribusiness, agritourism, access to land and water. Additionally, the Commission would provide value advice on land use and development concerns for relevant county departments. Based on the insights from other counties, it's clear that a strong leadership and effective communication with the farming community are essential for the success of such a commission. Therefore, I urge the County Council to carefully consider the findings and recommendations regarding the creation of an Ag Commission and take necessary steps to move this initiative forward. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think that may be everyone in the room. You've already spoken, so you can't speak again. Do we have anyone online? No. So I might mention, and you've kind of stirred a question I have for the manager. We've received a lot of positive comments on the Agricultural Commission. I don't think we've entertained one negative one yet, so I'm hoping that's on a good glide slope. But what that reminded me of was the initiative that was on again, off again, and is in progress now for changing our code on small farm businesses where are we on that? 'Cause-
April's already started that, so the committee has been chosen, and they've had at least 1 or 2 meetings so far, and I think there's 4 or 5 that are scheduled. So
Okay.
I can bring her back when that concludes, and then the Ag Commission is actually on the agenda today for.
Yeah, so the connection to me was, okay, well, if we already had this commission in place, boy, they would have been really informative of this effort. Anyway, I think that concludes public comment. Old business, we have the minutes from April 17th.
I move approval of the minutes.
Whoever else is speaking, go right ahead.
I move approval of the minutes.
And we have a second.
Well, second.
I think between Karen and Sue, we have a competition going on for,
No.
all right, any corrections, comments on the minutes? Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. New business number 5.1, financial quarterly report.
Good afternoon, Council. Mark Gasway, Clark County Finance Director, and I'm here today with Mitchell Kelly, who is our Reporting Analysis Manager. Just wanted to make one brief comment real quickly. Greg Kimsey had hoped to be here, and he was here, but it turns out that they are actually doing election results at 1:15, so he had to run out. So he didn't quite make it in. He was going to introduce us today. So we're here today to talk about the 2024 first quarter report, and I'm going to turn the time over to Mitchell so he can present that to you.
So we have 2 documents. One is a monthly financial update, and then the quarterly update that we have for you. We've prepared this with you in mind and what you might be interested in. If you have any comments or thoughts, please don't hesitate to ask. We can make updates to this report. So we just want to be really transparent about the status of the funds and the activity of the general fund and other activities of the county, and that's our goal. The first section goes over the revenues that general fund has had over comparing first quarter this year to last year. And you can see that we're on track to overall to be in a more positive situation than we were in the prior year. That our property tax is on track to be similar to what we've projected and also from prior year, and that our sales tax is growing, our sales tax collection is growing. Moving on to the expenses, you would anticipate for the first quarter that we'd be about 75% remaining of the budget, and you can see that within the salaries and benefits, we're just slightly over that. We have a little less than 75% remaining, meaning that we've overspent a little bit more than what we've anticipated. We can talk more about that and why that might be on the next sheet, but continuing on here, basically we're on track. We're on track with what we've budgeted, and so the departments are managing general fund in a tight manner. We're projecting to spend exactly what we said we would. And then moving on, this is the next section that we have, the Public Safety Sales Tax Fund that was recently approved by Clark County citizens. I added this to this report as it's something that is fairly new, and we wanted to make sure that we are disclosing that we are on track to spend it as council has suggested and budgeted for that special purpose tax. Are there any questions on this?
Yeah, so if we could just pause on that one, because I'm not sure I understand the graph. So, I mean, it's a new tax. We were waiting to see how it was going to pan out on a yearly basis. But, I mean, this looks like it's greatly grown over last year?
No, I'm sorry, this is budget to actual. So the green, the green tab, a bar is the budget, and then the tan bar is the actual. So we've collected.
So it's not year to year.
That's right, that's right.
I was just
In
following.
future years, I will provide year to year, but we don't have that because, yeah, that's not available at this time.
Because I would have loved to have seen that kind of growth and.
Yeah, yeah, something we can provide in the future, but we started collecting that last year.
Okay.
And sales tax are lagged, so we wouldn't have had anything much for the first quarter of '23.
Mark, you had a comment?
Yeah, I was just going to jump in. If you look at the ratios on the right, so what Mitchell has done here is indicate how much remaining budget is left. So right now on the expense side, it says there's 80% of the budget remaining. So usually through the first quarter, we would expect to see a ratio around 75% or so. So, you know, the 80% means we're maybe a little bit behind on our spending, but there may be some one-time items that will come through and catch that up. So being in that, you know, 75 to 80% ratio is where we would expect to be this time of year, or of budget remaining. So
if we do see that trend really develop towards the last quarter and we're underspending, you know, I know we had talked last year about, okay, we've already spent this, it's already operationally got to be spent every year. We don't really need to have our Public Safety Sales Tax Committee meet, but maybe we could revisit that if we do have money to expend.
absolutely, that could be an indication that there is some capacity to do something more within that fund. And again, the first quarter, it's a little tough to tell because we're just starting into this new.
And I think the team is still going to meet because I think they're going to revise or look at the minimum fund balance policy also for that, because we certainly want to maximize the use of that fund.
Exactly.
Super. Other questions by council?
And this is intended to be a dialogue. This isn't a work session or a presentation, so jump right in.
I have a quick question. Under the general fund revenue, the other revenue, I see we're down from the previous year.
Yeah.
Can you explain that?
Yeah, primarily it has to do with the timing of when we record our interest revenue. And in year over year, there was a pretty significant timing difference of interest revenue.
Is that the same for the discrepancy on the property taxes?
The property taxes.
Go ahead. I don't want to jump in on top.
No, you could go ahead.
I was going to say property taxes in the first quarter, sometimes people pay it in March, sometimes they pay in April. And so what we'll look at property taxes is the real telling point is probably June, after they've gone through the first half property taxes, and then again in the fall as they collect the second half. So it's just, you know, again, some people will pay a little bit early, and it looks like this year some people were in March rather than April. So,
Karen, any questions? Okay. Please.
Okay. Then turning over to the next, the other page, the other side of the page, we've presented in addition a couple of other things to note. Road fund is another activity that council in the past has expressed interest in. They have a significant, they're just starting their big time when they'll be working on expenses. So this is not, this is anticipated to see that they have a significant balance of their expenses remaining for the year. And then also they will be collecting property tax in this month as well. So we would anticipate that their revenues also will jump as we continue on. Community development, we like to keep track of what the general fund is planning to subsidize for the land use and wetland review. And at this time for the first quarter, at the first quarter of 24, we anticipate that the general fund would have to contribute about $440,000 for the first quarter to subsidize.
How is that a change? Is it up, down, level?
It's pretty comparable to prior years. Yeah.
I think last year, the full contribution was about 1.2 million. So if you take this times 4, we're going to be around 1.2 million again. So.
Okay. And then continuing on, we have the American Rescue Plan grant. And as you know, all of the funds have been allocated at this time. And many of the projects are continuing to be spent on, and we wanted to give you an update of that activity.
I was going to add real quickly, you can see that compared to last year at this time, there's been a significant amount of expenditures made. I think last year at this time, we were about 25 million. So they're continuing to spend, and they've continued to program throughout this year and even into 2025, the expenditure of these funds. So our anticipation is that we will spend as projected, so.
And so I had just a timing question as it came to my attention. We may have another roughly $1 million to repurpose.
Yes.
And so I wanted to know the timing of when when the rubber meets the road.
And I know exactly what you're referring to, because we were informed this morning as well that the amount that we had, that the council had approved for the broadband expansion project actually came in lower than we had allotted. So there will be a little bit of funding that will come back, and we'll make that available to departments so that they can put forward new requests. Now that we know, as of yesterday, we had 0 to offer them, and as of today, we have a little bit that we can extend out for new requests.
I'm just hoping our jail services is really aggressive in looking for those funds.
well, I was going to say, Amber gets to sit in on these meetings, so she gets a little bit of advance notice, but we'll let everyone have the opportunity to get a chance at those things. So a couple of things that I just wanted to comment on these is, as you can see, we've gone through and updated what has actually been spent to date on each of these projects. And there are a few projects that were approved either late last year or sometime to be, or actually budgeted to be spent this year. So you see that they haven't had any expenditures made, and that doesn't mean they won't be made. And those are kind of at the bottom of the list that we've added on. The Public Defender's Office is an example of that we just budgeted those expenditures just to start this year. So up to this point, we haven't had any, but we intend that those will still be spent. So I don't know if there's any questions on a particular project or where we may be at on these. So
I just have a comment as we're on ARPA. There will be a ribbon cutting for the North Country EMS facility June 7th. So we'll get a formal invitation, but while we're on the topic, just to let you know, very tangible project that came out of this.
And I have driven by, I've not stopped in, but I've driven by, and it's absolutely a fantastic addition to that little community there. I think it's going to be kind of almost a magnet building that the people in that area will be able to use. It's really well done. So.
And the auditor's office, I mean, there's quite a long list, and the jail services and the remodel projects all pushing forward at good speed.
We can go on to the next sheet, which is unless there's other questions about the ARPA. But the next sheet is the monthly financial update, and we send this monthly just to take note of the different revenues and where we are month to date, comparing years to years, and both for general fund expenses and revenues, and then also for the cash balances of some of the restricted funds, just so that we're all aware of those funds and how they can be used. I did want to take note, in the expense side, we've identified overtime because of interest, the amount spent on overtime in general fund. That's predominantly in public safety. You will take note that it has decreased over a year, but we are spending, we are at about 60% of the budget of overtime through the first quarter. So there's still some challenge on general fund with that. But we, in anticipation of just wanting to monitor that, our office has worked with other departments to set up dashboards so they can keep track of this overtime and really monitor it and make sure. And there is an increase, there is an improvement year over year, which is promising to see. And we anticipate as we use these tools that more benefits will continue.
Yeah, and I don't want to out any specific department, but even 5 years ago, I mean, we had one department in particular that was really exceeding overtime, and it wasn't, I mean, it was way beyond what was budgeted, and I'm just hopeful we can get on top of it even more and solve the problem, because overtime of this amount is, especially with that one slide showing personnel costs having greatly exceeded last year's expenses. I mean, is there anything yet to do? I mean, we have these tools in place. I mean, what else can we do?
And we are continuing to make, as you can see, it's been added as a line on this monthly report. And I think the fact that we're making it more visible allows us to, identify maybe early on where some of these, challenges are happening. And as Mitchell mentioned, we've been working with departments that primarily have some significant overtime to give them more insight into where that overtime and who is incurring that overtime. And so, again, by making it more visible, I think we'll be able to address the issue, or and I don't mean it as a bad thing, but maybe make positive steps towards either reducing overtime or making different decisions that allow us to control that area. Does that make sense?
And I think it's important to note also that overtime the budget line item does not increase as salaries increase. So there is no adjustment currently in the budget for that. And also the departments that use the majority of our overtime have minimum staffing levels, which drives some of the overtime. And as we're getting people hired in the jail and the sheriff's office and juvenile and others, hopefully we'll see that level off. But we do have a contingency set aside for overtime, knowing that this has been an issue. And I know that the auditor's office actually did an audit on overtime a few years ago, so we're always looking at how can we accurately reflect in the budget of what is a reality that we're going to face at some level.
One last comment from me. It's just, and again, I think we're beyond it, but part of the overtime problem years ago was abusive. I mean, there were just a set number of employees that were really bolstering salary on the eve of retirement, and that's not what overtime's for. And so I'm hopeful that we're beyond that issue now and solve that.
And I believe we are. I wanted to also call out that the departments that are primary users of overtime have been much more collaborative in working with us on developing dashboards or developing reports, and are, I think, more proactive in trying to manage overtime than previous years. And so that has been definite improvement. And without identifying the specific departments, they have been, like I said, much more collaborative in working with us on these things. So that's positive. So,
other questions or comments?
Yeah, would you mind reminding us what the components, the major ones anyway, of other revenue are in the general fund?
Everything that's not property tax or sales tax.
Yeah, what are the major components there?
It would be fines.
Fines and fees are collected by the court system.
Yeah, we do our
interest as well.
Our interest and also other government agreements
Other government.
we have for services, professional services contracts.
interdepartmental, interfund charges are included in that. So if we're collecting, indirect costs from another fund, that's also in there.
Weren't the interests that we were earning on
Yes.
fund balances, that's included as well? And I'm assuming that's going up, not going down.
Yeah,
Yes, that is.
those for the general fund are included in the general fund. So all of the other revenue generating activities that, you can think of in the county are included in that other category. So
Thank you.
does that?
Did that
Yeah.
answer your question, Karen?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Glenn?
Just wanted to say thank you. This is a very helpful document for us to kind of keep pace and keep track of where we're at. I appreciate the time to put this together.
I just had a couple of comments that I want to make as well. This monthly report, as we've mentioned before, it's published monthly. It's sent to the finance team and to county management. It's available. I'm not sure if it's being sent directly to council. It could be if you're interested in receiving that monthly as well. The quarterly report, of course, will come back in July after we've finished the second quarter and talk about it. It'll probably give us a little better indicator of where we're at for the year. And as Mitchell mentioned, this year, right now we see things, particularly within the general fund, being very tight. And in past years, we've had years where we've had money, unspent money fall to fund balance. But this year, I think it's going to be much tighter. And there's various reasons for that, but we'll continue to monitor that. Within some of the other funds, as you know, we have some ability to do things with the fund balances that are available, and those are, in the process of, how do we use these funds that have been available? So it's there's kind of a dichotomy here. We have some funds that are doing very well, and we have the ability to do some things, and most of those funds are restricted to specific purposes. Within the general fund, on the other hand, again, it's pretty tight, and a lot of that has to do with the nature of those services that we're providing out of the general fund, where, a lot of those are the law and justice services. 70% of that general fund is paying for our law and justice. And so as demands on those services grow and the expenses associated with those grow, it's going to continue to put more pressure on the general fund. So.
Yes, Mark,
one
I
point
would appreciate
go ahead, Karen.
receiving this monthly. I think that'd be terrific. Thank you.
We can do that. Would all the council like it also? I can have it sent to, no? Okay.
So from my point of view, number one, when you introduced the quarterly report, which I knew you were very proud of, and I took a look at it, and all the councilors, and it was a few years ago, went, wow, this is great. It really does give us a marker in time and show significant trends. So that I want to keep getting. I don't think I need to get it on a monthly basis. If something dramatically happens, I know you're going to tell us anyway.
Sure. What I'll do is I'll have it sent to Kristen, and Kristen can distribute it to council. Does that sound?
So
That's good.
Or
I will forward it.
Kathleen
I
gets
get
it every
I get
month.
monthly.
I do want to highlight one line item, though, because I try to do it with almost every meeting I'm in. And again, I'll look to jail services and all their efforts on putting reentry programs in place and drug treatment, mental health treatment, both within the jail and continuing outside and into the community. In this fund balance of the mental health sales tax, I mean, come on, we got to get that money out into the community. I mean, we can't just keep collecting this tax. I mean, this fund balance just keeps growing and growing. It is vastly underspent. We need to do something about it. We have the need, absolutely, right now. We just need the right providers. We know what we need in the way of services, even if it's a bridging. I've heard that, well, we need some new facilities in the jail before we can start having a licensed mental health care facility. There has to be a bridging strategy available. So anyway, I just want to keep selling that. I really hit Jordan because I'm hoping he can get everybody energized and.
Well, Chair, this has been a topic of conversation within the finance team as well, because not only do we look at, you know, the financial condition of the county, but we're also looking at the challenges that we face as we, you know, look at redeveloping or, you know, remodeling the jail and adding capacity and adding services and how those services change. And we definitely understand that the demand on mental health services in the jail has changed. And so that is part of our discussion, you know, what can the mental health sales tax pay as we, you know, incorporate those services within the jail. The same thing you mentioned with, you know, the opioid money. You know, can we not repurpose, but purpose some of that to provide services out of the jail? I think it was last week where they were talking about 75% of the population is affected by, you know, drug abuse. So what better, you know, use would there be? So all of these discussions are also happening within staff and particularly within the finance team. How can we better utilize these funds to address the issues that we have in the county?
Right. I mean, we want to put it to good use. And just as a reminder, I mean, substance abuse disorder is a mental health disorder.
Yep.
So I know we have some flexibility, and I don't know when we're going to start seeing the opioid actual money. Do we have a timeline for that?
We actually received some, and it's in the committee. I think right now they're determining with our provider how that's going to be spent, those services. So.
Yeah, we're most of the way through the process. I think we're almost ready to go with public with the awards, grant awards.
Any other comments or questions? Karen, go ahead.
Yes. Has staff determined yet what the limitations are on mental health sales tax in the jail? The usage of it?
Yes, I think the regulations around that are pretty clear. I think it's expanded or new services. So there is some depth to it, but we certainly want to make sure we're in compliance.
No facilities, huh?
I think we could.
Yeah, Mark's thinking, yes, we would have to take a look at that. And I know with legislative priorities, the finance team has brought this recommendation, and I had shared it with Jordan too, of looking at our restricted funds, like with REIT or with mental health sales tax, to see if it can be expanded for other uses. And that would be a legislative discussion. So we'll have more talks about that.
That if it can be used for a facility, that could be very, very key to some of the things that are needed.
Yeah, and I think because we did talk about that, if we had a new pod that was created for mental behavioral health, can we use mental health sales tax to pay for that new pod and that new remodel? So that has been brought up. So we're looking into it a little bit more, and we'll report back on that.
Great, thank you.
I think when we kind of summarize, and I know we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves because I know Amber's planning on having work sessions about the jail remodel itself. That will be one of the possible funding solutions for a piece of it. It'd be a very small piece, but it would still be a part of it. So
we can be a model in the state.
Yep. So,
does that conclude your presentation?
That's all we have. If there's any other questions on either of these two reports or anything that council would like to see at this point, we are more than happy to do that. I know if you have no qualms about emailing me directly or Mitchell if you have those questions. So.
Well, thank you very much. I think that concludes your presentation then. Then point 2, the Agricultural Council. Bruce?
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to start presenting on this, and then I will take questions on what we've presented today. So in spring of 2023, we talked to council about exploring an agricultural commission. And at that time, the direction was to look through our parks and legacy lands to make sure that we don't have anything that's already representing the agricultural commission. So we went and did that, and I'll give you the findings on that, and then what we found through researching all the 7 counties that have formed agricultural commissions throughout the state of Washington. So So first, we looked at the Parks Advisory Board. It has a very limited scope of conservation lands for farm. It's not looking at land use or anything to do with agritourism, like you mentioned, Chair Mebaji, or any of the other areas that have to do with the farming community. And then we looked at Heritage Farm to make sure we weren't replicating something that was already there, and that also has a very limited scope with looking at Heritage Farm. There also is representation that I called out in the memo that is part of Heritage Farm, but it's still looking at just one limited scope and not land use or uses of farmland throughout our county. So that's the history, and I wanted to share with council that was the direction and research that we did before we went forward in looking at the 7 counties that have a formed agricultural advisory body. So on the memo that I provided to Kathleen, on the section that's general purpose, most of the 7 counties, their agricultural commission lives in the community development, land use, and community planning departments. They don't live in the parks and lands divisions for the most part. They live in the actual planning departments to discuss recommendations. Most of these boards make recommendations to council and the planning commissions on relevant use for planning for farmland, uses for farmland, proposed legislation around farmland. So they have a lot of uses that are brought forth in this agricultural commission that we research throughout the state. So some possible duties for this commission and the makeup of that, I'll go into that second, is potential composition. We're looking at a commission that would range in size from 11 to 15 voting members. That's the makeup across the state in the 7 counties that we've looked at. And those would be representing voting members from different agricultural occupations, size of farm, geography, local food system, which has been brought up numerous times in some of our conversations with that. And then examples that we listed was the Farm Bureau, Conservation District, WSU Extension, 4-H, Food Security, culturally diverse organizations would make up the body of that agricultural commission. So part of the possible duties, and this is where it really differed from living in any of the Parks and Lands Department, is that it would be part of the planning process and recommendation to council for long-term economic sustainability of our agricultural systems in our community. So this would give a voice to the farming community that's often, we've heard, left out of conversations when we start talking about land use planning and those various things. I know specifically when I was out doing the 179th listening sessions, we heard a lot from the farmers out there that they wish they had a place for their voice to be heard. So this is definitely an area that we could see that being put to use. And then there would also be some pathways for next generation farmers. We saw that in a lot of the different areas. So we were talking about generational, passing on the farms to their kids, or people getting into farming in our community, what that would look like as well. And so we looked at a little bit more closely Skagit, Thurston, and Whatcom counties. And then what was mentioned today, strong leadership, the ability to communicate with the broader farming community would be a very important piece that this commission would do for the council. So that was what I will add to that. And I don't know, Councilor Marshall, if there's anything you want to add to, if I missed anything.
Thank you, and thank you for your support in pulling this together. I think you were very comprehensive. I'd first like to thank my fellow councilors for giving that initial thumbs up to proceed with this, and it's taken a little bit of time to come back here, and one of the reasons for that was the kind of serendipitously, the health department was had a grant and was doing some research in this area because one of their priorities for community health is access to local food. So that provided a lot of the detail here. And this is really something I think was envisioned back when there was the Agricultural Preservation Committee that was formed back in 2008. So I think very good that it's going to be into the code, because I think there's an ongoing need for this kind of an advisory group to go forward. And I think it's an entity that can interact with multiple departments, because just with the Rural Events Committee that is formed. April is heading that up, and, you know, so that it can touch on a lot of departments and be very helpful. So thanks so much.
Absolutely, my pleasure. So what questions do we have?
So I've had nothing but support for this from when we first started talking about it. My only question, and it's a mundane one, because I read it straight off the agenda, Agricultural Council, but we're going to call it a commission, correct?
That is, I don't know why it was labeled that on the agenda, but yes.
That was erroneous. So,
Yes.
but I said that's how I introduced the
Yes.
topic, but I just wanted to make sure we're working off.
Agricultural Commission, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, so Glenn?
Yes, looking forward to this. I think it's going to be an excellent addition for more advice for us to make decisions based on. One of the things that I would really like to, you know, this came up during the biannual code updates, I think, and we made all these changes to ADUs, and then we hear from the Commission on Aging that one of their big things that they're working on is ADUs and how that can help people that are aging, and the two never spoke. You know, we never got recommendation or any advice from that commission. So I, you know, starting with this commission, but also building on all the other advisory groups that we have in the county, I want to make sure that that communication is there so that when something's coming in front of us, we may not initially think of it as an issue of, you know, that the Commission on Aging should address, but we have to make a better effort to make those correlations and get that communication to them so that they can chime in if necessary. I mean, it's not going to be necessary for them to get into every little detail, but I appreciate this. Really looking forward to it.
So just formally, do we have thumbs up from all the counselors?
Absolutely.
Okay. Super, and that's a great point you just made. And we saw that with the code update when it was proposed just to eliminate the ag exempt code. And so you know, this kind of commission would be a great stakeholder in
Great.
participating.
Thank you to council. So I will do next steps. I will work with Kathleen on how we formalize this and put the package together, and then I'll bring that back to council for formalization, if that works for everyone. Okay.
Let's move on to 5.3, the I-5 Bridge Safety White Paper and Resolution. Is Karen making the presentation?
Well, I'd love to.
Georgia.
Unless someone else is game. I thought it might be most productive to go through the resolution primarily today, since that's actually going to be the main focus as if we decide to move this forward. Does that sound acceptable, Chair?
Yep. Well, I will admit I'm just reading it for the first time now. But Jordan stepped forward. Would you like him to do a background presentation, or?
Well, let's have Jordan step in with whatever I leave out, because he is certainly familiar with all parts of this and a true asset in bringing it forward. So if I go through the resolution, it kind of gives us an opportunity to talk about a few of the things that are in the white paper without dragging this on too much. You know, I do recommend that you read the white paper. We have other resolutions, as most of you probably already know, on the topics pertaining to the I-5, such as the third corridor, tolls, the modified LBA, which includes light rail and opposition to that. And you can find all of those on the Clark County Council webpage in that left-hand column. It's I-5 Bridge is one of the items down, I don't know, maybe 3/4 of the way down there on the left. And the resolution is really calling just for a focus on safety, although it could relate certainly to other areas as well, as you'll see in a moment, such as the third corridor. But with the Baltimore's Francis Scott Key Bridge, which collapsed at the end of March due to a collision involving the Dolly cargo ship, the need for bridge safety has really been highlighted nationally. And so it brings that topic to the fore while we're in the planning stage for I-5 in a really, really good way. And the point relative to Dolly is not that the cargo ships going across the or under the bridge that we have at the I-5 will be the same or identical or comparable or bigger or whatever to the Dolly. The point is that that accident has brought to the fore the importance of knowing how to protect every bridge, including the I-5 bridge, relative to whatever traffic it does have. And we certainly have significant cargo ships that do come through. The second whereas in the resolution points to the fact that we have accidents numbering about 250 a year or 5 per week across the United States, where ships collide with bridges. I frankly had not realized that the accidents were that common, but the fact that they are is what points to the need for this to be a focal point as we do our planning. The third whereas, where it is currently in the planning stage with key metrics such as equity inclusion and tolls and public transportation and bridge height and seismic retrofit. All of those things are talked about regularly, and some of them have committees devoted to them. But the metric of the waterway traffic safety is not one that is talked about hardly at all. And so this resolution is to bring that to the fore so that it is talked about on a regular basis, because it's something that the public and hopefully the council care a great deal about. The next whereas focuses on the need for scientific specificity regarding the various potential bridge safety hazards other than earthquakes, which is talked about to some extent. But let's use the engineering that is coming out of the Francis Scott Key Bridge discussions and apply it to other bridges, including the I-5, so that we learn things that that haven't been really talked about now nationally or locally about how to best protect the bridge that we are building, and what is the extent of protection that is needed, and how is that to be built, how much it would be in the form of dolphins versus in the form of protection directly of the piers. And then the last point of the whereas is that one of the reasons why in Baltimore they've been relatively able to recoup on their situation pertaining to commerce, not completely, but to a great extent, is because of a multiple of other corridors that exist for their traffic and the movement of freight. So given that point, how does that apply to the need for a third corridor in our area or other alternative methods of movement of commerce and people should there be an accident here? So anyway, that leads then to the whereases lead to the resolution that there be accountability for those associated with the IBR design. And that's many, many groups, clearly, to be really focused on safety and in terms of communicating that to the public so that we are aware of what the findings are from Francis Scott Key and how we can best apply them and to what extent relative to the I-5. So, Jordan, if you'd like to add to that, take questions, go for it.
Thanks, Councilor Jordan Bogie, for the record. Not too much to add. I think you did a really thorough job But essentially, just to reiterate, what the resolution really is asking is for, you know, the RTC, the folks working on the IBR project itself, to really take any kind of bridge safety and collision issues seriously, study them thoroughly, and make sure that those are communicated transparently in the process.
So I have some comments, but I want to see where the other counselors are. You know, we're missing one today. She hasn't signed on, right? Okay. So support, lack of support?
I'm supportive. I think it's well-written, well thought out. Thank you for your work on that, Counselor.
I view this a little bit differently. I come from the standpoint on this, I compared my own house. So my house was built in 1925. In 2008, I did a remodel to it. And from 1925 to 2008, there was nothing attaching my house to its foundation but gravity. And so we did some retrofitting. Now, my house is a lot better than it was before, but it's nothing compared to new construction. New construction, the world will end, and our houses will be still standing because they are so over-engineered. And I think that's one of the reasons why public projects like this have become so expensive, is because that extensive engineering and designing that go, that is, I mean, anything that was built in the 50s, our bridge, it's a total different game. I mean, we are planning for the most extreme of events in these situations. I see some value in some of this, but to me, I don't see that there being any problem that this is solving. I have faith and confidence in the IBR team that they're looking at this and addressing it. If anything, I think this is good at pointing out that you know, the vulnerability of the existing bridge that we have. Because that one, yes, I would worry about an impact, but I'm really not concerned with this particular situation, given the circumstances that we have, and that we will have a brand new bridge that is built to meet modern standards, which will be so much more higher level of design than what it actually needs to accommodate. So, and then the reason why normally I would support something like this, but I feel like we need to pick our battles on this. I think there's going to be some bigger decisions and choices that are coming up later on, and I think the more resolutions we pass, it kind of cheapens our message when we pass a resolution. So at this point in time, I would not be supportive of moving forward with it for those particular reasons.
If I may
thank you for
respond to that. First of all, I'm not going to ask you, Counselor, if you carry insurance on your house. But that is a comparable thought. I'm not asking that. But
I'm sorry,
do think that I should address
I wasn't able to hear you. Could you?
Picking our battles. This is not a battle. In talking with this topic about safety with others, I've found that there has been unanimity of thought process on the importance of it. And yes, realizing that raising it to a higher level of transparency would be a good thing. So I don't see it at all as a battle. And that's one of the beauties of it, is for Clark County Council to elevate this important topic to a new height where it just isn't right now in the public arena.
So I don't want to start a ping pong match here, and Glenn's comments are fair, but I do want to say with the counselors that we have here, I think we have 3 thumbs up. So I'm going to give you my comments, because over the years I've been bringing this up at RTC over and over and over again. It hasn't gotten much traction, and it is on the resiliency issue, the redundancy issue, the additional corridors for a system of transportation that can be greatly impacted by an accident, or accidents, as you mentioned, every time we have a rainstorm, police action, or a car accident on one or the other bridge, it is gridlock, and it's getting worse and worse all the way. I mean, it just spreads as gridlock throughout the whole system. Resiliency. You know, I lived through the Loma Prieta earthquake in the Bay Area when the Bay Bridge
on-ramps and off-ramps came down, as well as the section itself. But there are other bridges. There was a tunnel. There's BART. There was ferry service. They can accommodate that bridge coming down. Resiliency in the system is just something that's not given enough emphasis. So, and I think this does that. Just besides all the natural calamities that can occur, just building the new bridge is going to cause congestion throughout the entire system. So I think it's with that bridge accident. My first take when I heard, I said, well, okay, well, our channel doesn't go all the way to the bridge, so you're not going to get these big container ships. And by the way, the river flows the other direction, so if they lose power or lose the ability to steer, they're just going to start drifting towards Astoria and ended up grounded somewhere else. But the issue isn't that. So I appreciate this resolution. I appreciate the points you've made, and we do have heavy barges coming from the north, coming down the Columbia. Just the incline itself, we talk a lot about that at RTC, the different designs they're looking at. The steepness of the incline and decline is a hazard to traffic, depending on how it's designed. So I think this really highlights some important points that, and we don't otherwise have a voice with the IBR. So I think this is a relevant time to raise it. I'm happy with how it's drafted presently. So I would give it a thumbs up. I'm assuming, Karen Bowerman, you're giving it a thumbs up?
I do.
And Sue Marshall's a thumbs up too. So we have the three to move forward on this.
Okay, we will get this finalized and put it on the Tuesday agenda. I would ask Councilor Young, do you want your signature on the resolution?
My vote is no, but I will go ahead and sign it because it's a council decision at this point.
And so we'll also give Michelle the opportunity.
We'll talk to her as well and see if she would like her to have her signature included.
Super, thank you. And thank you for putting your name to it. Anything further on that, Karen?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay, council reports. I mean, we've kind of broadened what we do with council reports from time to time, and because I keep getting emails on the subject, and Sue and I met, I don't know if anyone else met. And I'm not going to characterize it as a reconsideration of our vote for church cemeteries, because there's a wholly different proposal now on not spot zoning to allow one church to put in a cemetery, but to allow other similarly situated churches have the same ability to put a cemetery in it. Quite frankly, when the staff briefed us on this initial vote, where I think we were uniformly against it, I was wondering, well, what's the danger here? What's the pros and cons? Why do we not allow cemeteries at churches out in the rural community? I mean, it somewhat seemed like a Byzantine rule or perhaps on the arbitrary and capricious side. So I, for one, I met with them, Sue met with them. I would like to either reconsider our original vote or consider a new and different approach. I mean, there may only be one church that would qualify to have its own cemetery, but not spot zoning, but really come up with a new code that just defines where a church could have its own cemetery. I think there's a need for it, and I felt there was a heartfelt presentation by the one church that had initially asked for it. So is there any support for looking at this issue again?
Yes, I met with them as well. And I feel like I know that I would be supportive of either approach that would come forward. I'm inclined to prefer the one that focuses in on this church because we know their situation, and looking at the maps and the whole arrangement that they have, it just makes such good sense for them to be able to move forward on this. I don't know, and I would need to learn that from staff, if that would be the case in every situation that is comparably zoned. And I don't know the answer to that. So for that reason, I certainly am supportive of this particular church having its cemetery.
I would not be supportive. I think the issue is really that this is on agricultural land, and a previous church was, and I think why they moved forward with this purchase and development of their church on agricultural resource land is that they were able to do it and get an exception previously on forest land. This particular case, you know, it's a new church. They were aware that it was agricultural land, that there were limits to what could be developed there. There is neighboring R5 parcels. I think there could be some other solution to their desire to have a nearby cemetery. But there's exceptions to that were made in state law. I think there's a number of them, but churches and schools are allowed to build on resource land, but there is no exception for cemeteries. So I would be very concerned if this were to be applied across the board. So those are my concerns.
So I'm not clear though, are you supportive of a focused approach like Karen suggested, or are you against reconsidering the vote?
I'm against reconsidering the vote.
Okay.
So I share similar sentiment. I'm against reconsidering, but I'm very open to looking into because I'm very opposed to making one-time exceptions. I don't think it's appropriate, but I'm willing to look at the issue from a standpoint of where are cemeteries allowed, where should they not, and then changing the code to reflect that. And if it works out for that particular incident, then great, but it also works for everybody, not just the one individual church. The second thing I would say is that I did meet with them, and I understand their plea. I still feel like, though, they purchased that land knowing that it was that situation, so I don't feel like any resources should be spent on by the county to look at this except for in a normal procedure. So like biannuals, if that's where we look at it or something, but not a separate process looking at it, if that makes any sense.
So I don't think we have a unanimity of 3 votes, but a slight open door. If Karen, you were to change your position to look at a broader look, basically looking at code that would not be spot zoning, but could be applied generally, that would be a different approach than what we looked at before. And I hear that Glenn supports that. I support that as well. If you were willing to go that route, then we did have 3 votes to move forward.
And as I said at the outset, I am willing to consider that, although I prefer the other approach, but I am willing to consider that approach with a broadening of it according to zoning and maybe other criteria added in there as well. In addition, I don't know. I grew up with cemeteries associated with a church, so I'm quite accustomed to seeing that and feeling the importance of development of community from that. So I'm so supportive of the concept, but exactly how to carry it out with zoning and maybe another factor or two, I don't know. So I would like to learn more about that.
Chair, real quick,
Please.
may I ask the county manager, what process would this be if this were something the staff was recommending or looking at changing, what process would that be normally involved in?
I'm going to have to look. I mean, it's usually tied to the biennial code amendment, but with the comp plan update, I just want to make sure I can bring that back next week with a suggested process of what the normal process would be, and then council can determine if you want to do something outside the normal process.
Okay, yeah, so my support would hinge on that being outside a normal process.
Okay, so I think we do have a way forward. I have no idea where Michelle would sit on this, but I think we do have some unanimity on 3 to move forward, and
We'll bring back
with
the
the
process.
caveat that Glenn just announced.
We'll bring back the process, and then any initial, if there's initial feedback from staff of like, this could work for this reason, or this can't work because of state law. So any high-level information, we'll bring that back next.
Thank you. So I don't have any other councilor reports. Sue?
I do have a report. Just following up on the rural events, I did attend their second meeting. It's a lively bunch. I think they're moving forward, and I think they're going to come to some agreement on how to pull this off. And I would just note that they're looking at rural land to really address this on land that's zoned agricultural. We'll need another approach, and maybe through the comp plan update. But again, it would be a good reason to have an ag commission to figure out the ins and outs of that. But I think there is a pathway forward that they're developing. And then I wanted to check back with the council on our committee assignments and identifying alternates. It came up this week with MPAC. I guess I was going to volunteer to participate in the meeting, but I'm not officially an alternate. So if I had voted, which I think they were looking to have a quorum, it wouldn't have counted. So it makes me think that maybe we should revisit actually assigning alternates to our committee assignments, maybe especially with MPAC, but it may make it easier for the staff when they know exactly who might be the person to fill in when there's an opening. I just tossed that out.
So we're going to fine you for appearing without being an alternate. No. Thank you so much.
I didn't
up.
appear.
I thought that was a situation where the primary was just not available and the alternate wasn't available, but let me just stop this.
What was your question, Chair?
So I thought this was kind of an unusual event where the primary wasn't available and then the alternate wasn't available, and then it kind of went out. Can anybody?
Yeah, I'm not sure on this particular one. I do know council didn't assign alternates on a lot of them last time, but we have in the past. If the alternate, if we can't find them, then we're using other counselors. So I don't think that should prohibit a vote, unless we're bypassing somebody who was identified as an alternate.
And then the other, and I don't know how it works committee to committee or board to board, we've had staff appear as well. Now, whether or not they would be able to constitute the quorum, I think that would depend on the ordinance that forms the actual.
It sounded like it wasn't a problem with us, but with MPAC's rules themselves, and just kind of formally letting them know who the maybe the alternate to the alternate might be, or if we have the ability to do that anyway. I think it was just a thing that came up, and I wanted to share that.
Well, at this time, I don't know that we need to do anything different, but thanks for your willingness to step in. And
just real quickly to comment on that too, I think MPAC is rare that we ever deal with anything that affects Clark County. So I think this is something to look into for the other commissions and committees and everything, to make sure that when there are voting, votes taking place, that we have our ducks in a row with that. But I think this one, I don't really think we have to worry, because I'll know if there's something important coming up. In general, they don't vote on anything that's not on the agenda. So having a non-voting person there just to kind of, keep an eye out for Clark County affecting stuff, I think is what's most important. Yeah. Oh,
That's it for me.
yes.
Can I just close the loop on that one? Does council want this brought back to look at committee assignments and alternates, or are we good with how we're doing it right now? To make sure we have the
I
clear
would
direction.
recommend that we go back and assign alternates, because I think it makes it easier for staff when they know who to call on.
Probably better.
Okay, so that's 2.
It's fine. I am not passionate one way or the other, but I think it's fine to do that.
Okay. You can also delegate it to staff, and we can just start assigning alternates and let you know. We'll bring it back to council.
We're going to make the county manager alternate on every committee. Karen, did you have any council reports?
No, not today. Thank you.
Okay.
Sure. I have one report.
Oh, please, go ahead.
So I sat also, Jordan was in that meeting as well, on the Office of Public Defense hearing session, and it was loud and clear from everybody that they are adamantly not opposed. I didn't really hear anybody opposed to any of the changes, just saying, we can't do this without funding, so, and then the discussion also, the fact that we couldn't find the bodies to perform what you're asking us to do. So we'll see what happens from that. The next one's coming up in May. I won't go to that one, but I don't know if anybody else will attend it, but figured I'd report that we're not alone in this.
Yeah, and so I appreciate that. And I would tell you, I am not sold on this notion at all that the bar and the court is pursuing, having spent most of my adult life in court. Some of this, no matter how sophisticated the formula gets, you can handle 100 clients in a couple hours in a courtroom successfully. But with these rules, you would not be allowed to. And you would need 10 more lawyers, which we don't have.
Yeah, there is
other solutions. So, I don't, we're not talking about emergency room staffing here. And you have a court, a judge in charge who will make sure that justice doesn't get lost in the process. I think some of these rules on how many cases you can have, and you can have, I'm not going to say death penalty case because that's a completely different category. Let's just say a life case. And it could be simple and clean cut. But boy, it would get so many points that, hey, I can't handle, I got this one case, it's a life case. You're going to have to hire some other lawyer to get these other 20 defendants handled. Some of it, it's not a good thing. And Oregon has gotten blasted for it. And we will blast our system for it until there's some rationality to it. And I will tell you, Tony Golik is very outspoken on this topic for one reason, and he is absolutely right. If you don't have the bodies, you don't have the defense attorneys, then cases are just going to start getting dismissed. The system is going to fall apart. There's other alternatives that the bar is not looking at. So I'm not happy with how it's progressing, but the dollars from the manager's point of view, the dollars from every county's point of view just aren't there, and then you don't have enough lawyers with the rules that they're proposing. How do you fix? You can't fix that. I mean, it takes at least 3-4 years. Or now that we have an internship program or apprentice program in place, maybe less. But this is pretty complicated, and I think the defense bar is not right in what they're pressing here. In any case, thanks for that report. Did you have other council reports? Policy updates? Or, I'm sorry, work session requests?
None today.
Policy update.
Good afternoon, Council. Jordan Bogie again for the record. Just a couple of things. I was mostly going to talk about the Office of Public Defense listening session as well, so I think that's been pretty well covered. The only other things I would mention related to that hearing, that listening session, is some of the other things that did come up are around the support staff needs. And so this, the way that the rules are currently written, basically there's a ramp-up process where you need more attorneys at first for adult and then juvenile cases, and then in the final year, it's anticipated that there would need to be additional support staff. And for Clark County, and thank you, Amber, for putting this together for us to use as a resource in the listening session, but we would need over 100 plus FTE to comply with how the rules are currently written just in support staff. And so obviously this is not a situation that is super tenable, and so I think this is going to be something that evolves over time. But just wanted to give that update, and I know that we'll have a lot of support from our new Director of Public Defense, who I know was just accepted the job offer and is going to be a great resource for us as we move forward into this new world and all of that what this looks like.
Yeah, and let's not scare him by saying yes, to hire 100 people without money to do that.
Yes, so we'll be advocating, and I guess I should also say as an update as well, I did submit to the Association of Counties our suggested legislative priorities for the association, and those did include indigent defense as one of the items, and then obviously jail capital funding was the second. And so Councilor Belcott and I will be up in Olympia in about a month to discuss that with the folks at WASAC. So looking forward to that. And then the only other thing that I wanted to note was just related to the conversation that was happening earlier about the mental health sales tax and allowable uses. And in RCW 82-14460, that authorizes the, technically they call it the sales and use tax for chemical dependency or mental health treatment services or therapeutic courts that we call the mental health sales tax. In Section C, it does have a clause that says that monies collected by cities and counties under this section may also be used for modifications to existing facilities to address health and safety needs necessary for the provision, operation, or delivery of chemical dependency or mental health treatment programs or services otherwise funded with the monies collected in this section. And my read of that, I'm not a lawyer, obviously we'll defer to our staff for final determination, but as I read that, I would think that capital funding would be an allowable use, assuming that is part of new and expanded service delivery provision for mental health services.
So for that alone, you should get a bonus for this year. Maybe a box of chocolates. Did you have other policy updates?
That's all I've got for you today.
Oh, and I understand we have no executive session today, so we stand adjourned.